All right. In this lecture, we're going to review some HTML architecture. We're going to be talking about CSS. Then we're going to be doing some wireframing to plan how our web page is actually going to look before we actually write any HTML. And then at the very end, we're going to be interacting with a web page using JavaScript. So let's just go ahead and get started. So HTML is everything you see on the screen in the web browser. So everything right here on GitHub, this is all HTML with CSS. CSS, cascading style sheets, is what makes the web page look pretty. All this is HTML. Some websites really are heavy on CSS. Other websites don't use pretty much any CSS, and they're totally fine, like Craigslist. Craigslist. So Craigslist really doesn't have any CSS, and it's one of the most popular visited websites on the planet. So don't think that you always need to have really beautiful websites, but generally speaking, if your websites or your application isn't that great, you're gonna need something to differentiate itself. So this website, Craigslist, has a great utility. Therefore, it can get away with not changing anything from a style standpoint. Let's get into HTML architecture. Where's my so I'm inside my VS Code. I'm inside the directory HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And the first thing I want to do is actually create an HTML file. So in order to do that, I'll just touch, and I'll do index. That's general, that's pretty standard naming for our HTML files. If it's only one, if you have multiple HTML files in your application, then you can name them kind of whatever you want. So I'm going to do touch index.html. So it's the extension HTML. So I've got my new HTML file right here. You see it's got a 5, which is HTML5. So there's a couple things we can do. We can literally just start writing HTML in here. So HTML consists of tags, IDs, classes. A tag is like the main component of HTML. So there's a couple ways we can create an HTML file or create the architecture. We can literally manually type in everything. So this is an H1 tag for header 1, and I can say like this is a header. And now I can come down here in the terminal, and I want to open that up by doing open index.html. And it should open up. Oh no, it can't open up. So what I'm going to do is, can I drag this over here? Probably not. All right, let's fix that. Okay, I fixed the ability to open up my index HTML file directly into my Chrome browser. If you can't do that, you have to literally navigate to the directory of where this is at on your machine and literally drag and drop it. But there's a way to update that. So let me open up this index.html file in the browser by running open and then the name of file index.html. So this is a header tag right up here. So H1 stands for header. So there's header 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But typically speaking, when our HTML file, the overall architecture, we want to consist of a head and a body. And we can manually write that by doing head and then body tag. But there's an easier way to do that using extensions or snippets or no. Yeah, just quickly wiring up the HTML architecture by doing shorthand key strokes to get this up and running. So what I did was just do exclamation point, where it brings up the Emmet abbreviation, and you can kind of see exactly what this does when you just click enter. And it brings up the architecture, the basic architecture of an HTML file, the core things that you kind of need. Now there's other ones. If you just type in HTML, you can do that. That doesn't work, but HTML, we got 5. That brings it up as well. You can also do like HTML. I've got boilerplate. This is a bunch of other stuff that is useful as well, but it's pretty much exactly the same thing. But it also has like script tags and links, link tags for style sheets. So I'm just gonna use the Emmet. So just the exclamation point, bang, and here we go. So what we have here is the basic architecture for an HTML file. So we have the doc type at the very top. This essentially just says, hey, this document is an HTML file. It's pretty much what it is. We have HTML, the HTML tag with the language of English. And then inside the head, if you think of the head as just like the head of a person, the head is where kind of all the logic and important information is inside the HTML file. So we've got a bunch of metadata. We have, it says the char set is UTF-8. There's other char sets, but this is the standard. It's got some other attributes for metadata about this HTML file. You don't really need to know what all this stuff is, but just know that this is where all the other data, whether you want to put in scripts, have linked to like style sheets, bring in different fonts, or just other things about your web page you can bring in here. So that is what exists inside the head. And then inside the body is where everything that you see on the screen is. So all the content that you see on a screen in the web browser lies within the body. So right here, we also have the title. This is what will show up here. So right now, this is just says the index.html file. So in here, I can say like HTML and CSS lecture. So I save that. If I can refresh it, you can see the title change up there. See HTML and CSS lecture. So inside the body is where I mentioned all the content, and HTML consists of tags, which are these body, head, meta. These are all different tags, HTML tags. And there's a gazillion HTML tags. We don't expect you to memorize all of them, but there are some main ones that you'll see quite often. So we can have like H1 tag, which stands for header. I can say hello code Platoon. So H1 tag. There's H2 tags. There's H3. You can go down the line. So I can H3 tag. Oh, no, that was H2. H3 tag. And then there's like paragraph tags, P tags, which stands for paragraph. This is a paragraph tag. And there's also, I mean, there's a million of them. There's like nav, which is just like, hey, everything within here should be designated for the navigation. There's like section. So everything within here should be a designated section on the HTML page, on the web page. There's also divs. So divs you'll see probably the most out of any single tag. There's the div tag. So this is a div. There's also span. Span is also very common, depending on what you want to do. This is a span tag. So if I look up here and I refresh this, you can see, hey, hello code Platoon, that's H1, H2, H3. And then this is a paragraph tag, this is a div, and this is a span. So you notice how there's like spacing in between the H tags and the paragraph tags, but not like margin, like vertical, like top margin and bottom margin between the div and the span. So if I open up the Chrome Dev Tools, so if I do Command Option I on Chrome browser, it brings up the Chrome Developer Tools. And if I can close it by doing that as well, but if I really wanted to get there manually, I can go to up over here with the 3 dots, more tools, and then developer tools. And this is where we can actually inspect our web page. And majority of the time, I always keep this open whenever I'm developing, so I can inspect it. And you can make edits directly in here. So under the elements tab is where you can actually see all the meta, the body, hello, Platoon, all the different tags. And as I hover over them, notice how they highlight within the web browser. I don't know why this is a div is kind of weird looking. But as you notice, as I highlight H1, H2, H3, and paragraph tag, you can see the top and bottom margin on the paragraph tag. So if I come over here, there's something also called the box model. The box model. So you can see what HTML tags, what their margin is, what their padding is, and just the overall architecture of that individual tag. So if I come down here where styles, here's you can actually like write inline style or like customize your web page from in here, but it doesn't persist because it doesn't come from a file. But if I go to computed, and you can see the box model. So I'm highlighting the paragraph tag. I'm coming over here. And so this is how wide this element is, this tag, this HTML element is. It's 1,900 or 1,094 pixels by 18 pixels. Where is it? So it doesn't have any padding, doesn't have any border, but when I go to margin, it says, hey, it's got 16 pixels of top margin and 16 pixels of bottom margin. And you can see where it's like the dashes, that means it doesn't have any padding, it doesn't have a border, and it doesn't have any left or right margin here. And you can also do that with up here. You can see the margin on an H1 tag is 21.44 pixels, the top and bottom margin, etc. So it's good to know the Chrome Developer Tools so you can inspect and make edits on the fly just to see how things work before you actually go ahead and edit them directly in your CSS file. So the difference between a div and a span, so if I come over here and just make everything all on one line. So if I come back over here and inside my Chrome Developer Tools, if I click this little arrow with like I'm pressing on the screen, I can highlight this and it'll also highlight it inside of the elements. So if you look at a div, when I highlight it, it takes up the entire length of the screen of the web page. That means it's a block level element. So it takes up the entire width of the web page. And if I notice how when I highlight the span, it only takes up the width of however long like the content is in between the tags. So div is a block level element and a span is what is called an inline element. So just be cognizant of block level and inline elements. There's also inline block and stuff. There's inline block. There's a bunch of them. You don't need to know them all right now, but just know that there are differences in between what element there is, what the functionality of each element. And you can come down here inside of the material, and you can actually see, where does it say? So htmlreference.io, you can see the different characteristics of each tag. So if I wanted to search for, I don't know, let's search for a div tag and see what it looks like, what it is. So div right here, you can see it's not self-closing, but it is a block level element. And if I look at a span, you can see it's inline. And you can see all the different, there's a gazillion different tags. You don't need to know them all. But if you want to know more specifics about that individual tag, you can kind of see what they do. All right. So let's talk about bringing in some CSS into our HTML page. So I'm here. So there's a way to actually bring in CSS because right now it's just raw HTML. So again, inside of our head is where we want to, where all the logic and all like the metadata of our HTML page lies. So let's actually bring in some styling. So I need to create a link tag. So link. And some tags don't have closing. So the link tag, so notice how like the head has a corresponding closing head tag. The body, pretty much all of them do. There are some other ones that don't, like image does not usually have a closing tag. But just if you want to know like how to put an image in, just type in like how to insert an image into HTML. So the link tag links to a specific style sheet. So I need to actually href. So this is the path to my style sheet. So right now I don't have any style, like a style sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and create one. So touch styles.css. So this cascading style sheets, the CSS file has a CSS extension. Oh, so touch, I spelled it wrong. So let's go ahead and rename it styles. And now I can the path to the styles. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to open up, split the screen. And here we go. So now I can actually style my web page a little bit. Just keep it simple. If I wanted every single word to be like the color red inside of my web page, I can target every single color by just calling the body. So if I wanted to target a specific tag, I literally just can write the tag name, body, and I want the color of all the text to be like red. I can literally write red and it shows up red. There's blue. I mean, there's a bunch of colors. And if I wanted to make it a little more unique, I can highlight over it. So highlight over the color and it brings up this RGB where I can make different colors. So let's make it, let's pink. And so now instead of the word red, it's using RGB values. You can also use hex values as well. So if I come over here, refresh that, now all the color of my HTML elements are this like purplish color. I can also target specific H1. So cascading style sheets, it reads from top to bottom, and whatever comes last takes priority. So body, every color is purple, but maybe I want to make my H1 color to be blue or something. So blue. So I come over here. Now my H1 tag is blue. If I wanted to, let's see what we can do. Let's make a couple more divs. So I can make, say I want the divs to be color red. I can refresh that. So I've got a couple more divs. Now all the divs are red. Let's zoom in there. And maybe I want so don't forget to close each CSS value with a semicolon. So I've got color. Maybe I want the font size to be 28 pixels. Now I can refresh. Now the font size is 28. But maybe I just only want to target the first div. So I can say div first of type. So the very first div, maybe I want the font size to be 28 instead of all the divs. So come over here. So now the first div is 28 pixels and the other two divs are just the regular size. And I can also do the same thing for the last div. So first of type, a last of type. And maybe I want this one to be like 45 pixels. So come over here, refresh it, and there we go. So we're just specifically targeting HTML tags right now, which generally isn't that, you generally want to use classes and IDs. So for example, if I have like two H1 tags, or let's say two H2 tags, I'm going to get rid of this H3 tag. And I only want to target one of them. I can always do like the first type of or first child, but ideally you want to use either an ID or class name. And for IDs are only used once throughout the entire application or throughout your entire HTML file or all of your files. So if you think of like an entire classroom, an ID of an individual person. So if you can think of all these tags as like people, and each person will have a unique ID if you give it to them. So I can say like, actually, let's do it with H1. So an ID, I'm going to make this one a title. So no other HTML element can have an ID of title. This will only exist right here. So instead of targeting H1, because I might have other H1 elements or HTML tags in my application, because my application is going to be pretty big. So I'm going to have, more than likely or not, I'm going to have more than one H1 tag. So you don't want to be targeting every single H1 tag inside the entire application, because that's what this does. So maybe I just want to target the title. So the H1 tag where the ID is title. So in order to target a very specific ID, I can use hashtag and then the title or the ID name. So ID, so hashtag, and then the name of the ID. So hashtag title, it's targeting this H1 element. So if I refresh, everything's the same. Maybe I want to make this, instead of blue, I want to make it like that really ugly green. If I refresh, there we go. And also, so that's how you target titles, or I'm sorry, that's how you target IDs, using this ID attribute equals whatever the ID is, whatever you want to call the ID. And you can call it whatever you want, like whatever you want. And ideally, you can do that. So whatever you want. But you will really, you want to describe your ID specific to what that HTML element is. So this is going to be like the title. Let's call the ID title. Next, we can use classes. So classes are the opposite of IDs, where IDs are, you can only use once throughout your entire application. Classes are elements that you can use multiple times. So say there's a reoccurring theme between like subtitles that appear on multiple pages. And so you have a class of subtitle. And now here I can use this in other HTML tags as well. So maybe here, maybe I want to use it also down here inside of the span for whatever reason. Maybe the span is a subtitle. And now I can target the classes by using period followed by the class name, subtitle. So I can say subtitle, I'm going to say like font size equals 18 pixels. I'm going to have like a margin of 10 pixels. So when I use this margin, it's saying, hey, totally around the box, like top, bottom, left and right margin be 10. I can also, do just, if I only want to target margin top, or have this have a margin top, I can do that. Or I can use, it goes around clockwise. So I can say, hey, the top one be 10, the left, or I'm sorry, the right margin be, let's say like 25 pixels, the bottom margin be 15 pixels, and the left margin be 5 pixels. So you can also do that instead of targeting like individual top, bottom, left, right. So if I want to target each side individually, I can do that. So if I refresh this, here we go. And now if I highlight this, where would it go? Subtitle, font size, class subtitle, H2 tag. So yeah, I'm targeting these H2 tags, these two H2 tags, as well as the span. Actually, I'm going to move this class to this specific div. Whoop. I'm going to say like, div. This is also a subtitle. Come over here. Refresh it. So I got, this is also a subtitle. Why is that so large? Div, because it's, oh, the reason why this div is so large is because I've got this last type of, and this is the last type of div. So I'm just going to delete this for right now, these two. I'm going to refresh. So H2 subtitle. That also looks kind of small, doesn't it? So if I highlight that, I can see, if I come over here to styles, I can see the font size. I can, oh, there we go. So if I can click that, I can see the subtitle down here, font size, and I can click these on and off. So I can change the font size. I can activate the font size or activate the margin on and off. Let's go to here, the computed, and look at the box model for these H2 tags as well, or like the subtitle. So I can see I got the margin top is 10, margin right is 25, margin bottom is 15, and margin left is 5. And you can kind of see it when I hover over it, how like the margins are different. All right, so those are IDs, classes, targeting tags using CSS. All right. All right, let's talk about wireframing. So wireframing is very similar to pseudocoding when you're trying to solve a technical challenge, to database schema design when you're designing a database schema. So when you're pseudocoding a technical challenge, you're literally just writing out in plain English vernacular, like how to solve the problem. With database schema design, you might use some tools such as like a piece of paper or that some app that allows you to create a database schema like from a visual perspective. So that's very similar to what wireframing is. So before you actually write any code or HTML, you want to wireframe your design of what you want your web page to look like. So before you write a single thing of HTML, you want to first wireframe. So what we're going to do, we're going to quickly wireframe up. So here's an example of like a standard like SaaS web page that has like a company name, has got a nav bar with like a logo or a company name. It's got some different links to features, enterprise support. It's got this login button that might redirect you to a login page to actually use the application. Then it's also got some information about the different pricing tiers for this this service. So you can literally use a piece of paper. You can use Google Sheets, PowerPoint. There's wireframing software out there. So you can even, but you can pretty much use anything you want to wireframe. And that's literally just to like quickly design, it's not just to design, but also understand like what HTML tags you want to use and where everything goes. So I'm just going to use something called limnew real quick. And I'm going to wireframe up this web page really quickly, and then we'll jump into actually coding it up or using some HTML and CSS to design let's design like the nav bar. So this is limnew. It's a free service. I'm gonna come over here. It's literally just a quickly how to whiteboard something. So I'm going to use this here, and I'm going to just start drawing boxes. So if I'm looking at this web page that I want to wireframe, everything you see is essentially like a div. So every section is a div or a tag. So up here, we've got this nav bar. It all looks the same, this whole thing. So things that are grouped together on the web page should be encapsulated in its own div or its own little section. So if you look here, like there's like 10 users included, 2 gigabytes of storage, help center, email support. That's not one continuous line that has like breaks after it. These are each individual p tags or just standard divs. So this entire little section should be included in its own, encapsulated in its own div. And so like if you look at things that are very similar, they should be encapsulated or surrounded by its own div. So these 3 boxes, they're very similar, so they probably should be grouped together. If you look at some other things that are very similar, like this pricing up here, pricing and this subtitle, the subheader, or the sub content, like they're both center aligned. Yeah, their pricing is a larger, like has a larger font size and maybe a different color, but they're both centered in the screen. So maybe this section right here should be its own little div. Likewise with the buttons up here. So they're all right aligned. So maybe all these buttons should be encapsulated in its own little section or own little div. So let's go ahead and wireframe this up. So I'm just going to create a large box to simulate the web page itself. So that's just the screen that I'm looking at. So that's this entire thing. So the nav bar is its own little section. So I'm going to, all right, this is going to be the nav bar. And it's okay if it's messy. You're not trying to be perfect. You're just trying to get it out on the screen. So we got this company name. So this company name could be like its own div. It can be a paragraph. It can be like an image for a logo. It can be an H1 tag. And now let's come over here. And so now we have these group of buttons. So you don't want to have like 4 buttons like this by itself, because it'll be very difficult to style it, to separate these out, because there's nothing really separating this element from these 4 elements. So I'm going to erase that and encapsulate this big like section for these, like the nav button group. And then within this section, I'm going to create the 4 buttons or 4 links. They can be links, they can be buttons. Just depends on what you want them to be. So right there. So there we go. So there's the nav bar. Now we've got this section. So this entire section is pretty similar. All these are centered on the screen. So this pricing is centered, the subtitle is centered, and these 3 should be encapsulated its own group and should be centered. So I'm going to create another big section for this entire piece. So here I can say like maybe this entire section is 1. I don't even need to do that. I'm going to delete that. So I can say, all right, we've got the title for pricing, and we have like the subheader. And this could be, we might want it to be in its own section, but I think for right now it's okay because everything's gonna be centered. But now let's get down to these. This can be kind of complicated. So these should be in its own group. So I'm gonna make a big div right there. And so now that is gonna encapsulate, this box is gonna encapsulate all 3 of these. So now let's work on one of these. So on one of these right there. All right, that's 1. So we have free up here. So we could say like, all right, we have free. And maybe these are all its own section as well. And the reason why free is its own little div, it's because of the background color is different right there. So maybe this could be its own as well. Well, actually, let's see. These are all that have the same background color. I'm going to make another big div right there, like so. And that's going to encapsulate all of these. And just for simplicity, I can make, what is that, 5 of those. So that's for the $0 a month. Users, help center access, email support, and that's that email support. And then I can have like a button down here. And I can pretty much copy and paste these over to these, but some of them are unique. So like Pro has another element underneath it. If I can highlight these. Copy and paste. Move that over here. Copy, paste, move that over here. All right. So maybe this one needs to have 2. So I can delete that. And box. And perhaps, yeah, maybe I can do like that. Like so. And this little star, that's like a unique element that I'd have to like customize, but it should still be within this big box right up here. So that looks okay. Now we want to like label each and every single one of them. So this might be like a nav element. Let's see. So maybe that is a nav. And maybe this is, oh, this can be either an image or an H1 tag. Let's just say it's an H1 tag. And so nav, and then maybe this one is a div. That's the big one that's encapsulating it. And then these might be links or buttons. Just say like an A tag. So all these are there. Whoa, what just happened? So that's an A tag. A tag. A tag. So you kind of get the idea. So you want to kind of label everything also. So maybe this one might actually want to be like a button or something because it's a little different. But who knows? Just kind of depending on what you kind of want it to be. So if I were to go through it all, it would take a little while, but don't spend so much time. Just understand that the big ones that are encapsulating everything, they generally, most 90% of the time, they'll be its own div. So let's actually go ahead and mock up this. Let's mock up this NavBar. So I'm going to open up. Where's my VS Code? Here we go. So I've got this wireframing directory. So the first thing I need to do is create an index.html file. And also I'm going to create a styles.css file and open index. There we go. Oh, not open index. Yeah, I guess we can open it up as well. I'm going to bring that over here, close that out. It's actually code index HTML and also do styles.css. So I'm going to split the screen right here, close that. And I'm just going to HTML. Let's do some boilerplate. That's okay. I'm just going to remove some of these comments. Do I have a title? I can say like wireframing exercise. My style sheets. So this is already is there. I can do styles.css. It already kind of knows. And inside of here is where everything is going to go. And don't worry about this script tag at the very end. This is where we're going to import our JavaScript. You can have the script tag at the very bottom or also at the very top inside of here, but the script tag can actually go anywhere within it, and you can actually write some JavaScript in here like console log hello, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. So let's just leave everything as is. So if I'm in here, there's nothing there. Let's look at our wireframing. So the first thing I want to do is create a nav. So in here, I'm going to create a nav. Where is that? So here we got a company name. So we want to create this thing first. So let's get rid of that. So I've got my wireframing exercise inside the title. I'm going to create a nav right there. You can also create a div. It's not that big of a deal, but nav div. A lot of people use nav. Other people use div for the nav. But this is more of just an indicator that, hey, inside of these two tags, it goes the navigation. So if I look down here, I've got nav, I got H1 tag. So I want an H1 tag. Let's just call it company name. And then right there. And then over here, we've got a div. And it's got 3 A tags. So A tag there. And let's just kind of look at what that looks like. Features, enterprise support, and login. 3 A tags. Got features, enterprise, support, I can't remember. Do we want that? So this is a button. Let's actually create a button for that. So instead of an A tag right there, let's create a button. Whoop. Lowercase button. There we go. And what is this? Login. Cool. So now if I refresh this, we have our company name, features, enterprise support, and our login. So let's open up the Chrome developer tools. Just keep these open so we can kind of see what everything looks like. So it's good if you want to make edits. So if you're like figuring out what this should look like. So maybe, so inside of our nav, all right. So inside of our nav bar, again, we want to, so instead of our nav bar, yeah, let's make this an ID and call it nav bar. Because again, this whole thing is the nav bar. So now I'm in my style sheets. I can target the nav bar. And we're going to talk about this later. But there's different. So right now, the company name is above where the links are currently, which we don't want. So there's a couple ways we can do this. We can use the grid. So if you type in grid CSS tricks is a really good guide on how to use CSS. So here's a grid, kind of read about how to work with it. There's also Flexbox. So Flexbox CSS, and that's what I'm going to use to align those elements inside of the nav bar. So if I look right here, I've got the container. There's this key called display, and the value should be flex. So my container here is the nav bar. So my nav bar, let's do display. So inline, nope, I want display flex. And if I come over here and I refresh that, notice, okay, great. Now everything's all on the same line. Great. But now I want, so there's the nav bar and the two child elements are this H1 tag and this div right here. So those are the two child elements of the nav bar. So if I come over here to Flexbox, there's this other key called flex direction, which I can make it a row. So if I did flex direction column, it'll put it all in a single column like it was just before. So if I do column, notice how it goes back, but I don't want it. I want it to be a row. So I want it to go row. I can also do like row reverse, which will reverse these two elements. And it puts it on the other side. So really cool stuff you can do with Flexbox. But I just want to use the default flex, display flex, refresh it. There we go. But there's also this other element instead of flex direction. You can use flex wrap that will wrap stuff as the screen gets responsive. There's flex flow. There's this justifying content. So this purple is representing the div, so which would be the nav bar, and these yellow or these orange boxes represents the children of the nav bar. So right now, and it kind of shows what this key and the value does to the children. So it looks like I want them to be totally separated apart at the left and right of the screen. So I'm going to do justify content, space between. So if I come over here inside of, I can do justify content, and notice how it's like, hey, it knows that justify content and it shows all the different elements or the values of justify content. And I want space between. So if I come over here, refresh, it's starting to look how I want it. Similar, we're almost there. Next, I want maybe the background of the background color to be, say, like light gray. So come down here, light gray, refresh, slowly starting. So now I see I have this like margin up top, bottom, left, and right, which I don't like. And that is default from the body. So maybe what I want to do is get rid of that. So I'm going to target the body element or the body tag and say margin 0 and do a refresh. And there, got rid of that margin. All right. Next, do I want a border bottom? So let's talk about borders as well. So I can do border bottom. I can do how border bottom. I can say border bottom, or I'll just say like border, bottom CSS. So border bottom property looks like it takes in 3 different values: the width, the type, the style type of the border. So it can be a solid border, it can be a dotted, it can be a double line, and the color of the border. So I'm going to do border bottom, say 2 pixels. It's going to be a solid border, and it's going to be just a standard gray. So instead of a light gray. So if I refresh, cool. We're almost there. And now say I want to like mess with this element right here. Let's actually, before I do that. So here, so this can be an H1. I'm going to say like have this be an ID of logo. And maybe I don't want it to be an H1. Maybe I just want it to be a span or a div. Up to you what you want it to be. So I'm just going to make it a div. So if I refresh it, nothing really changes. Oh, looks like it changed. And the reason why that changed height is because the H1 tag has a default height and everything. So yeah, that's why that happened. So let's actually target the logo. So the company name has an ID of logo. So in order to target ID, I use the hashtag and then the name of that ID. So I can say, let's make that font size big again. Say that's 28 pixels. Great. Now I'm going to refresh that. Cool. Now that's good. Whoop. But notice how there's some spacing of top, bottom, left, and right, or I guess top, bottom, and left. So let's actually add some margin. Or yeah, let's margin left. Let's just say margin. Let's see if I do 20 pixels. So margin all the way around of 20 pixels. There we go. I've got a margin of 20 pixels. And if I highlight that, you can see like the margin, that's that like yellow, orangish tan. So if I look down here, if I clicked on that or highlight it down here, so it's highlighting in the web page. And if I come down here to styles, you can see the logo has a font size of 28. And I can adjust this. If I'm clicking up, I can increase, decrease, just to see what it looks like in the web browser. I can also add other items in here like color. So like red. And click enter and it automatically changes right on the web page. This is good to like experiment with instead of doing it, going directly in your file, changing your file, saving it and reloading it. You can directly change it right inside of here, but every time I refresh it, it goes back to its default. So that looks okay right now. So now let's actually change these buttons or these this part. So if I come down over here, so I want to target these elements. So I'm going to create, what should I create? An ID and say like nav buttons, because this is a nav buttons. So in here, I want to target the nav buttons. And I don't necessarily know. So maybe I want some margin around that. So I'm going to say like margin 10 pixels initially, and then we can mess with it as it changes. All right, that's okay. But maybe. All right, there we go. Let's just keep going. So let's just target. So these three are all the same. So these features, enterprise support are all the same. So I'm just going to target all the A tags initially. So A tags. Yeah, let's do padding, 10 pixels around. Let's make it a font size of 18 pixels. And let's look at, just see what that looks like. All right, so far so good. So I've got that padding. The green is the padding. And if I highlight this, the tan or beige, that's the margin. So the green has padding of 10 pixels. So also when you highlight it, you can see like, hey, this is an A tag. Whoop, A tag, it's color black, font 18 pixels times, padding's got 10 pixels. All right. Let's see what else we got. And this A tag usually has href, and I can like do that. So this is a link to those specific web pages, but right now they don't go anywhere. Ooh, so when I added the href there, it changed the styling of it. So links have very specific styles. So features, enterprise. So I don't like that. I don't want it to have that. So the A tags, I want to say text, decoration, none. And what text decoration does, so the link has a default text style or text decoration, and I don't want it to have that. So I'm going to say text decoration, none, and there it goes. It removed that. But it still has this purple color to it, which I don't want. So I'm going to say color black. Refresh. Okay, great. And notice how when I hover over it, it's got that little pointer, which is good. But the button doesn't yet. So we'll get to that. All right, nav buttons. But I noticed that these aren't that centered either. I want them to be a little more centered. So is there anything we can do about that? I just want to change the nav bar. Oh, not the logo. Oh yeah, the logo. So instead of margin all the way around, let's see, margin, look at my notes, margin, let's make it a margin left because I don't necessarily need, let's do padding top of 15 pixels. And there's plenty of different ways to style. All right. Ooh, that looks ugly. So maybe we can change it a little bit more. So is there any way we can, instead of having padding top, I'm just going to highlight this. So instead of padding top of 15, let's make it now 5 pixels. 155 pixels. And we can change it later if we want. All right. So let's talk about hover state pseudo classes. So when I hover over these, I want it to change colors. So I'm going to say like a.hover. So that's a different state. Hover. What is that called? Hover. Pseudo classes. This is taking really long. So pseudo classes. So yeah, these are called pseudo classes. So if whenever I hover on that, maybe I want to change the background color to blue, but maybe I don't want it to be that blue. I want it to change it to a different blue. There we go. And I want to change the font color to white. It's a little bit better. All right. Let's actually get rid of that. Padding, top and bottom, and left and right is. See, like right there, it doesn't have any padding. It doesn't go all the way to, it looks like there's like a, that's okay for right now. All right, so we got that. Now we have to change the login. Nav buttons. Let's actually make this top, bottom, left, and right. Nav buttons. Is there any margin? Okay, there is some margin there. Okay, just making sure. So now this login button, let's just call it ID login. And I can also make these a class names because eventually maybe I have other, I'm going to actually make these all their its own class, like button, nav button. Yeah, maybe I don't want it to be nav buttons. Maybe I want it to be class. What should I call it? So I don't want maybe ID for the nav buttons. Maybe should nav button group because it's a group of buttons. So now I can change that. So I got to come over here because I changed that ID. So down here, I just want nav button. Now I can add this class just to that, as well as to that. Instead of targeting this A tag, I want to target the class of nav button. And it's going to target all the nav buttons. So if I refresh, everything should still be the same. All right. Let's see what else. So now we have to target this login. So I'm going to just say ID is hashtag login. And the login, since it's a button, I don't like this is just really ugly. Let's say the background color. Well, hold on. Let's actually look at what this looks like. So we want it to have a border and a color of like purple. So we can say like color purple. Can we do light purple? Purple. Nope. Purple. All right. Let's see what else we got. Say border radius. So border radius, if I look up here, notice how it's not like a direct, it's not like a square. Maybe I want to have, well, first let's actually create a border. Border, color, let's make it purple as well. Then I can say border radius. So if I want the corners to be rounded instead of just like pointy, I can say border radius 10 pixels. Just look at what that looks like now. All right, we're getting there, but it still looks really nasty. Let's say background color, light gray, background. All right, starting to look a little bit like that. So let's do like margin right. Let's give it some margin on the right side. So 10 pixels. Let's give it some font size just to be equal to the nav button. So 18 pixels. See what that looks like. All right, we're starting to get somewhere. But when I click on it, because this is a button, it gives us like purple or like this blue outline, which I don't like. That's like a default characteristic of the button tag or the button element. So outline, I don't want it to have an outline. So if I refresh that and I click on it, notice how there's no outline anymore. Let's give it some more padding. 10 pixels because it's right here, like this is too close. So I want the border to be a little bigger. There we go. So now we see company name is a little messed up. So we might want to fix that. And when I hover over that, maybe I want the color to change. So this is where we get the pseudo class. Login, hover. I want the background color to be purple, but maybe not that specific purple. Maybe I want it to be a darker purple, maybe. There we go. So now when I hover over it, I don't like that. Yeah, but I can say color white for the text. That's too dark. So yeah. There we go. It's a little bit better. But I also want, notice how when I hover over this, oh, that's actually used. Let's use those colors. So this RGB. And then here, instead of, yeah, there we go. So hover, hover, hover. All right, looks a lot better. But when I hover over this, so when I hover over this, the cursor changes to like a pointer. But when I hover over the button, it doesn't. So maybe I want to change the cursor as well. Cursor, pointer, great. And now when I actually click on this, maybe I want the cursor to change. So when you click on something, it turns that element into an active state. So login, active, so it's another pseudo class. I want the cursor to be grabbing. So if I refresh, I notice how like when I click it, it's grabbing. All right. I think that's good for right now. Let's actually adjust this company name. And I'm not quite sure how to do that yet. So I'm just going to use, instead of editing in here and just keep on editing, I'm going to edit down here. So I've got padding top and bottom. Maybe I'll do padding top. And 10 pixels. So it's close, and I can press up to kind of get it centered. So yeah, let's just say like 15 pixels. So I can come up here, find the logo, padding top, 15 pixels, get rid of that 0 because I'm only targeting the top part of that. And if I refresh it, there we go. Oh. And so here we go. There's the nav bar for that. But now let's actually talk about using JavaScript inside of this page. So if I wanted to use JavaScript, so first let's actually just talk about using JavaScript. You can utilize JavaScript to make your web page interact in a certain way. So I can load some JavaScript. So if I come over here to my HTML, index.html, we've got the script down here. The script allows us to load in JavaScript files and have them execute those JavaScript files when the web page loads. So I'm going to come down here in the terminal and create a touch app.js. So created a up here. So there's my app.js. So this is a JavaScript file. I'm going to split the screen and there we go. So here inside the script tag, I can type in app.js because this is the path to where that app.js file is, and it's currently in the same directory. So all I have to do is do app.js. If I come over here into my JavaScript file and just say console.log, hello code Platoon, and save it, refresh it, come up here to the wireframing exercises, come over here into my browser or web term or Chrome developer tools, click the console. And if I refresh this, watch what shows up here. If I refresh it, it says hello code Platoon. So what happened is this loaded and then it loaded this app.js file. These two attributes, async defer, just good. It's best like good practice to keep these here. If inside your JavaScript file, so typically I can also have this up here, but if I didn't have these two tags here, this HTML would load, it'd come down here, it'd load the JavaScript, so it'd execute this, and then it would load the rest of the document or the HTML page. And if my JavaScript tried to do some, like grab some elements manually, if I try to grab an element inside the HTML before the HTML was loaded, it would throw an error. So the defer tag or attribute says, hey, make sure that the entire browser, or I'm sorry, the entire document loads on the web page before you run the script. And async is similar to that, but it essentially says like while this is loading, grab this, but we have this defer in here as well, so it just makes sure that this app.js file loads after everything on the document has been displayed on the screen. So it's just good practice to have that there. You can also load this at the very bottom and not include these because it loads top to bottom. So it'll load everything first and then it'll come down here and load that script tag. But just best practice, keep this async and defer in here at the very bottom or inside of this script tag. But you can keep this up here as well. So I've got this console.log that's loading code Platoon. But maybe I want to, when I click this button, login, have it do something. So I can target specific elements on the screen. So I'm in the console here. I can grab the entire document. We're gonna get into like the DOM, the document object model, which is essentially everything on the screen. It is like an object. So if I say document So notice how it highlights the entire screen because I'm grabbing the entire everything. So document, I can do dot location. Look at all these different things that attributes or built-in methods that I can do off of the document. So create comment, create element. So I can manually create elements on the screen by doing document.create element. There's the main one we want is document.get element by, or there's also, I think it's get query or query selector. So if I come down here, the very near the bottom, where is it? Query selector. So I can also select elements by their query or query elements by just whatever. But the main one is document.get element by. So for example, document.get element by, let's grab an element by its ID. So what IDs do we have? We have the logo. So dot logo. If I click enter there, this is the element that I grabbed, that entire element. So in here I can do const logo equals document dot get element by ID logo. Now I type in logo. There I've got that company div. Now if you look in today's curriculum, we have these things called where is it? It's not in here. Event listeners. So I can add an event listener on my web page. An event can be anything. Like I can scroll, maybe I click something, maybe when the page loads. So if I want to Google, I can say like JavaScript event listeners list. So I can see all the different event listeners. So W3 schools is a good one. So these are all the event listeners that I can grab. So on focus, input, when the mouse enters, mouse leaves. So when the mouse enters an element, I can trigger a function to do something. So let's actually do that. So maybe when I hover over or when I go into the company name element, I change the name to like a secret company. So I can say, add event listener. Pointer is moved into an element. So I'm just going to click on that. So I'll try yourself. So let's just look at what that looks like and see what that. So I've got function. So on mouse enter, you can literally write on mouse enter into that tag, or you can do, let's see, logo.add event listener. What is it? On mouse enter. See what that looks like. Yep, on mouse enter. Now I can type a function. So I can, I don't know, function. And when I enter in there, maybe I want to alert the user. You hovered over the company name. Oh. There we go. Cool. So I add an event listener. Now this event listener is listening to what happens. So it's keeping track of where the mouse is. And then when I hover over this, oh, it didn't work. Let's see what happened. Add event listener. Add event listener. Event target, add event. Did I spell it wrong? let's see. Whoop. Add event listener on mouse enter function. Let's just, why didn't it work? Let's just write it in here in our code. So I can do const logo equals document dot get element by ID and say logo. Now I'm going to console log the logo just to see what that looks like. So when I load this, refresh it, it's going to come in here, read hello code platoon. It's going to grab this element by its ID. I'm assigning that element to a variable called logo, and it's console logging the logo. So let's refresh it. There we go. So maybe I want to do logo dot add event listener on mouse. Is that what it is? I just want to make sure. Get out of here. Event listener JavaScript list. We can also do a different one if we wanted to. Wheel up. Oh, it's just mouse enter. Darn it. So if I do mouse enter, I can execute a function. So let's write another function just right here. Let's write a function called const hover over logo, and it's going to just alert the user, say you hovered over the logo. And so this add event listener takes in two parameters, the event listener type, as well as the function that executes when I hover over it. So I can do alert, refresh that. So if I refresh that, there we go. So I refresh that again. It's console logging here, and I'm up here. And notice how we get an alert to show up. Cool. But maybe I don't want the alert to show up. Maybe I want to logo.inner HTML. Maybe I want that to change, or let's actually call it inner text. Inner text to say wireframing. So what I'm doing is changing the inner text to the logo element, because right now it's company name. But when I hover over it, it changes to wireframing. Kind of cool. And I can also do on mouse enter. I can all do mouse leave. I can say like, hey, if logo inner text equals wireframing, and do some logic here. I wanted to say company name again. Else, so if it's wireframing, company name, else, I want it to switch back to wireframing. What happened? So else logo inner HTML. Oh, why didn't it work? Console log. Look, console log logo dot inner text. Just want to see what that looks like. So it's company name. If it equals wireframing. Oh, else equals that. And some semicolons there. So let's see if that works. Wireframing, there it goes. So now when it comes out, there's that. And maybe I want to add another one. So instead of the logo, I want to grab the login button. So login button, login, and const. Oh, maybe I want to add an event listener to that. So logo or login button, I'm adding an event listener. Add event listener. Click. And here I can just literally write a function. Enter or alert. You successfully logged in. So if I refresh that, just make sure everything's still working. So the wireframing thing, event listener works. If I click that, you successfully logged in. So you can do all kinds of different, you can interact with your web page in all kinds of different ways. Just look at the different event listeners, the different ways you can add an event listener. You can change the style of stuff. So I can even like change logo.style. So like background color equals red. So instead of alerting, or in addition to alerting, I'm also going to change the background style to the logo. So I'm going to refresh that. So that still works. Now I click on that, and then it changes the background style. A bunch of different things you could do. Ooh, cool. All right. And that concludes interacting our wireframing. So wireframing up. So it's like a sketch of what your application should look like, or your web page should look like. And we covered interacting with the web browser or with your HTML using JavaScript, using a JavaScript tag. So here we have our head. Inside of our head, we're loading in our style sheets, and we're also loading this app.js script tag, which is coming into here and loading all of this after everything else is loaded. So, and this is our nav. Yep, that's everything.